Verines, or desserts served in glasses, are creamy treats where I've used raspberries in 3 different forms with a fresh surprise hidden inside. With my impeccable timing, now that the wedding season is over, I'm presenting a candy bar dessert. So today, as mentioned, we are making raspberry verrines, and this recipe will yield 16 servings. Let's get started with the insert because it needs to cool down and set properly before we can use it. For this, I've placed 300 grams of raspberry puree in a small pot. I had it frozen, so I'll need to warm it up slightly to defrost, which is what I'm doing now. By the way, you can also follow me on Instagram where I post plenty of content, so make sure to check it out. In a smaller bowl, I've combined 20 grams of sugar and 5 grams of pectin. Once the raspberry puree has warmed up slightly to around 30 to 40 Celsius, we'll pour a bit of puree over the sugar and pectin mixture, stir it well, and then return the mix to the pot. Many of you asked me what can be used as a substitute for pectin. Nothing gels or thickens quite like pectin, which is why I use it. In theory, you could use cornstarch or gelatin, but gelatin sets too firmly. It's simply a different texture. While starch, though offering a somewhat similar texture to pectin, requires adjusting the quantity, and I haven't tasted it enough to recommend exact measurements. It needs experimentation. We bring the mixture to a boil, and it needs to boil for about a minute to activate the pectin properly. Stir it constantly to prevent sticking. Transfer the mixture to a bowl, cover it with cling film in direct contact with the surface, and let it cool completely in the fridge until it sets. While that cools, let's move on to the cheese layer. For this, I've placed 15 grams of granulated gelatin in a small bowl and hydrated it with 75 grams of very cold water. Set it aside for at least 10 minutes to allow the gelatin to hydrate thoroughly. In a slightly larger bowl, I've combined 250 grams of plain yogurt, 3.5% fat, 250 grams of mascarpone, 150 grams of ricotta cheese, 150 grams of sugar, and a touch of vanilla extract. Mix these ingredients well until smooth and the sugar has dissolved. Since we'll be using this mixture in relatively small dessert glasses, it needs to be fluid. To achieve this, I warmed the cheese and sugar mixture slightly in a double boiler or microwave until it reaches room temperature, just warm enough to the touch. With the cheese warmed, the gelatin hydrated and melted, incorporate the gelatin into the cheese mixture, stirring well. This eliminates the stress of adding gelatin to something cold, which could cause it to set prematurely or form lumps. Then, fold in 200 grams of lightly whipped cream, just until soft peaks form, in 2 batches for a slightly airy texture. The final mixture should be soft enough to pipe into dessert glasses without being too runny. As mentioned earlier, this recipe makes 16 servings, so I'm using 120 ml glasses and I'll link them in the video description. If you use larger glasses, you'll either need to use more of the mixture and end up with fewer servings, or use the same amount and have partially filled glasses. I find that these 120 ml glasses strike the perfect balance, not too full, but not looking empty either. Transfer the mixture into a piping bag and pipe 40 grams into each glass. Cut a very small tip of the piping bag, allowing you to control the flow and stop at 40 grams before moving into the next glass. The goal is to keep the glass edge clean and the layers as even as possible for a polished look. After piping each glass, tap them lightly to level the mixture. We'll set the remaining mixture aside and move on to the raspberry insert, which should now be well cooled and firm enough to handle. Using another piping bag filled with the raspberry insert, inject 15 grams into the center of each glass. The idea here was to make the insert a hidden surprise, only discovered when someone digs in with a spoon. So, add 15 grams to each glass. For the second layer, the pink one, I used 15 grams of freeze-dried raspberry powder. I processed the freeze-dried raspberries in a food processor and sifted out the seeds, leaving only the fine powder. Gradually mix the powder into the remaining cheesecake mixture, adding a little at a time to avoid lumps and stir well. This method ensures the mixture gets a smooth pink color and a distinct raspberry flavor. Repeat the same process as with the first layer. Transfer the mixture into a piping bag and pipe about 25 grams into each glass. Again, tap the glasses lightly to level the top layer. For decoration, top each dessert with a fresh raspberry and finely crumbled red velvet cake or freeze-dried raspberry for a pop of color. And there you have it, 16 very creamy desserts. As I mentioned, they are perfect for candy bars as they hold their consistency beautifully over time. For more recipes like this, don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe to my channel and follow me on Instagram for more tips and inspiration.